I want to just kind of go through this trajectory of yours because it's an interesting one. So let's start with where you grew up.
I grew up in Lake Tahoe and was part of the Squaw Valley Ski and had two brothers to chase around, and then got into ski racing in my time in Tahoe.
So how old were you when you started ski racing?
I mean, that's relative. I probably was in my first race at 5, fun race, and then 7, it got more serious. And but yeah, I mean, I was skiing since I was 2, and it was our family sport, just like a lot of families here in Crested Butte.
Yep. But this wasn't the ski racing stuff in a way takes on a more traditional looking path a little bit later. But my understanding is you weren't just around banging gates at an early age. You were still exploring the whole mountain and kind of just doing both. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, this day and age, when you're a ski racer, it definitely takes on a different form earlier. That's in all sports these days, right? Everyone's trying to get their kids to be the best in the world at 7. But I mean, at Squaw Valley, and we raced, but we also played a lot. I mean, we just chased each other around the mountain, and it was more of, the focus was just skiing, and it happened that every now and then we'd go around gates.
You have a moment, a big moment, when you going to Burke Ski Academy, but give me, what is a standout moment of yours, say prior to Burke? Just a kind of standout marker for you as you think back to those times in your life.
Just skiing before Burke and what? I just remembered I had no choice. I didn't even question not skiing. My older brother skied. My parents moved us from Davis, California to Lake Tahoe so we could ski. It was just ingrained in me that we were a skiing family, and there wasn't, we didn't have hockey. I just didn't know of other things, so we just went and skied all the time. Apparently my parents told me that I loved it, and they would come and find me skiing in the rain when everybody else was already in the lodge. And, taken on a lot of forms. I know you heard me talk a few weeks ago, but my brother who got us into skiing, he passed away skiing, and I think that took on a whole nother entity for me, what my drive was as a skier. Maybe it had something to do with him, being that he got us to become a ski family, and then it didn't work out so well for him. And then I just remember the joy, and we just played. Every day was a play day when we were on the mountain. And I think that's what captured the love of the sport for me. And then I started to get good at ski racing, and I don't remember thinking much about it either. Just something that I would show up and go to races, and I started winning them. I don't remember, I reflect back, and I'm like, I don't remember learning to race.
So in that sense, I mean, Burke's kind of a big deal. But that felt like just a natural next step for you. It's like,
I'm one of those people who doesn't pay attention to what the big deal is. I had no idea that Burke was a big deal. Growing up ski racing, when you get to a higher level or you get competitive, skiing's not a school sport. So when you're going to a public school, the principal for the high school, I had an older brother, my parents already told them that if he missed more than 7 days in a semester, he was going to flunk or take him down a grade level. So my parents had to figure out an alternative if we wanted to keep skiing. And so my brother found Burke. And so then when it came to my turn, basically it was a no-brainer. I just knew if I was going to continue skiing, I had to leave. And I didn't know Burke was a top ski school. I knew nothing about it other than my brother went there, and that was where I ended up. And I never missed Tahoe. I mean, you would think, so Burke is in Vermont, for those of you who don't know it, the Northeast Kingdom, in the middle of nowhere, sheer ice, sometimes you get rain, and I never missed squaw. I never missed Tahoe once. I was in a new element. We worked out very hard. I loved working out. I loved challenging myself as a ski racer. I definitely went in, I knew I was going into my freshman year I was one of 6 girls. And I knew, my parents told me that the class I was going into, every girl was the top girl from their division. So I knew I was definitely entering something competitive, but it didn't scare me. I mean, I wasn't dreaming to be a top level racer. I was just going through the motions.
You just were happy to be skiing. You're still racing and training, and you were into that.
Yeah, I was into it, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was younger, and even at Burke, we always go through these times of, okay, you guys, you need to write your goals out. And I knew I had to write make the Olympics, because you're kind of an idiot if you don't. You're in this platform, that's what the coaches want you to see. But I honestly never even cared at that point. I eventually did care, but when I was younger, I just skied to ski. So I just followed my heart.
We've talked a little bit about the actual school part. Turns out, seems like the racing came a lot easier or more naturally for you than some of the educational structures and systems that we were, some years ago. It was more of there's one way to do things, and that didn't necessarily line up so well with you.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I struggled in school, and I knew I was a standout student who always had to be pulled out to the side and take extra tests, and I had untimed tests, so I had untimed SATs, but it was just apparent that I wasn't a natural student. And it got to me, and I did not enjoy school, and so I really struggled with it. I remember even at Burke, I was like, I don't want to go to college, but if I'm gonna go, I knew I would figure it out. I was a hard enough worker. I knew I would get through it, but athletics were different. Athletics, right from the get-go, people complimented how well I was doing. Cross-country races when I ran, I was water skiing and picking up that really well and quick, and snow skiing. So everybody patted me on the back when it came to sports, but when it came to school, I was embarrassed and shy in the classroom and too afraid to speak up. So, anything athletic, I just took it and ran. And that was my freedom. That was where I felt confident, good about myself. So that's pretty much why I probably got into sports so much.
Do you think, and it seems to me that today, I'm not prepared to say that we've got kind of learning types and different educational systems sort of dialed right now, but I think it's better than it probably was some time ago. Do you think it would have made a pretty significant difference for you if there was, everybody's got to learn this way, this is how we instruct? Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I was a different learning style student. And, the public school system did not really do me justice. Burke did, actually, and Burke, we didn't have grades, so it was awesome. And so, I went there. It was all about Burke, you had to earn your respect with the coaches and teachers just by trying hard. We were trying, they're there to help you. We got into colleges, they write evaluations on what kind of student you are, what kind of kid you are, all across the board. And I mean, kids get into Ivy League schools from Burke without grades because schools like Williams and Bates and CU and DU and UVM, Middlebury, they know Burke now. It's been around for a while. I'm about to go to the 50th anniversary of the school in June. So these schools started to receive the process and what the teachers wrote. And when I graduated, a classmate of mine who was super smart, she applied to Harvard, Bates, Williams, and she got in nothing because she didn't get good evaluations. They said, she's smart, she doesn't work hard. So she had to go back and earn the respect of the teachers and the faculty to then go and get into a really good college. So for me, it was the best because the teachers lived on campus. After class, I'd go up to the teacher right away and be like, can you meet with me again to explain this all over again? Because I'd kind of get stage fright in school and in the classroom. And So it's definitely just the quite opposite of outside of school arena for me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, just no one ever patted me on the back that I was a good student. So transitioned my life to try to find where I was rewarded.
There's an interesting, I know this anecdote, which is really interesting, the way that, you were like, look, if there had been more encouragement, perhaps on the school side of things, that may have been a bit different in terms of your own, how you felt about it, and your own kind of confidence in that, and you're drawing that parallel to on your athletic career. But there's a funny thing where you had told me that after Burke, I think, you found out years later that you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Sorry, tell me about this, because I think it's easy for us to look at you in hindsight in this remarkable career and what you've done and sort of put you in the like, oh, you're just a natural, everyone always just saw this talent and this work ethic and the like. That maybe wasn't true in every single case, though.
Right. So when I went to go to Burke, Burke is in Vermont, like I said, and I'm from Lake Tahoe, the West Coast. Burke, the faculty, the headmaster, they didn't really respect us West Coasters because we don't work as hard and we're a little more laid back. And so all the girls, basically, I don't know if you guys have heard of Shane McConkey went to Burke too. He's a year older. So he was from Squaw also. So we were the West Coast kids, and everybody was from either East Coast Canada or New York or Vermont, Massachusetts. And into a class of the top girls who were all from the East in different states. And I was the top girl from the West, and the headmaster and the coaches told my parents that probably they shouldn't send me to Burke, and if they did, for more than 2 years, because they didn't think I'd ever be strong enough. I mean, basically my legs were the size of my arms. I was a string bean, no muscle. And they just didn't think, one, I was from the West Coast, that's a check against me. I was me. And they already had all the top girls who they thought were going to be the best for the school, and I was counted out. So they told my parents this, but my parents didn't tell me until after I quit my ski racing career. The master even told me it. And I just remember my parents told me that they didn't think I was going to last for more than 2 years, and not to even send me there. I ended up making the U.S. ski team my sophomore year, and 2 girls in my class to go on to the '92 Olympics. And, still, which we might get into kids, I mean, I have parents all the time who are like, oh, because you were good, your kids are going to be good, or my kid this. You never know. You can't count anyone out, ever, because here, supposedly the top academy in the country, the coaches counted me out. And if I knew that, I do question where my mental state would have been going into my racing career at Burke, knowing that people were doubting me in that way. But and so I just naturally worked hard and naturally started in the East Coast. Yeah.
It's a great lesson, I think, about the power of encouragement and the power of not encouraging, and we better be real careful on those fronts. Let's talk about the U.S. ski team. That's an interesting chapter of your life. You are at Burke for 4 years and then stick around in the PG program, which that was a good time of life. As ski, train, that's about it.
Yeah, your food, your meals were made, you just worked out, All they expected out of you at Burke is just work hard, and that was easy for me.
Talk to me a bit about some of that as you think back about that, your years on the U.S. ski team. Highlights, biggest lessons learned?
Highlights for me was just traveling the world. And I tell people, when I was younger, we had to do career reports, and I wrote 2 career reports on being a stewardess or a flight attendant, is what they call them now, because I just That was what, I guess if I was going to have goals, my dream was just to travel. So when I started ski racing and I made the US ski team, I was like, this is, so in a way, kind of wanting to be a flight attendant to now, I'm in the world. That was actually what I wanted to do in life. And so when I made the team, you know, I just loved traveling, loved the girls. Half of the girls I was on the team with, we didn't all love each other, and just, I don't know, I new experiences. And so every day just I had to learn to travel on my own at a very young age, become really independent. There's just so many highlights back in the early years. And then through the later part of my career was when things got complicated and just more challenging.
Talk a bit about that. I mean, I've heard you talk a bit about sort of the longer you're on the team, the sort of higher the expectations become. There can be a bit of an isolating effect to this.
Well, the US ski team's funny. It's the US ski team, but it's a team full of individual athletes. So you travel together, you room together, you eat together, you know, you're driving in the same vans together, unless you're Lindsey Vonn, which back in our day, I mean, you know, Street was my era, Tommy Moe, if anybody knows about ski racing. We didn't get the luxury to hire our own coaches and to branch off the way that they can do it now. And you definitely have to be the top and able to do that, because finances to get your own coach and to travel away from the ski team. They make it very difficult. So you have to have, your coaches are the coaches that they pick. At Burke, if I didn't like the coaches, I could have gone to a new academy, you know, or a different ski club. When you're on the US ski team, you're stuck with those coaches, and you're stuck with your team. So yes, at first there was a bunch of us younger girls traveling together, and half of them were great friends, you know, whatever, I didn't need to interact with them. And then as you start climbing the ladder, I kept skiing well and going, you know, higher and higher, and more people get kicked off the team or quit. And as that's more, and I realized some of my close friends were gonna get kicked off or leave, I remember feeling desperate internally, going, oh my God, I hope she beats me today, because I don't know what I'm gonna do when she leaves. Now it's business. And I didn't really understand that, because I skied, my whole career was because I loved it. I loved working hard, I loved traveling, I loved the challenge, and the good group of people. And then all of a sudden, you didn't have your posse or your friends, and you have to figure out how to kind of be independent and think for yourself. And coaches who might not give you the pat on the back that elevated you before. And so towards the end, it just became very challenging, because it wasn't a very team-like environment anymore.
Yeah. You had, I think, a pretty important with Kristen Ulmer. And when does that conversation happen in the midst of what you're describing right now, when you're finding the US ski team stuff to be pretty challenging and rather isolating? You have a conversation with Kristen, who I guess is telling you a bit of what she's got going on.
Yeah. At Kristen Ulmer, she was at my house with a trainer who lived in my hometown with the US ski team, was friends with her. So she came over and she started telling me about her lifestyle and how she just goes and travels and skis and powder skis. I was like, wow, that sounds really intriguing. And it definitely got in my head. And then Shane McConkey was starting to branch off and do this stuff. And that was just something I was doing. I didn't look at it as it was a career or something you could branch off to. So, you know, I probably ski raced for a few more years, but towards the end, I started daydreaming about the days that I used to with my brothers, with my friends, and how much fun it used to be. And I don't want to say ski racing wasn't fun, because I loved it, but the environment was no longer, it was my place anymore. And no disrespect for any of the teammates or anything, because you need to have that mindset. And that is what weans out the people who are not 100% committed. I feel like there's 3 elements to be a top athlete: natural talent, hard work, and then what's in your head. And ultimately what's in your head kind of weans out everybody else eventually. So if you're not strong up, and I reflect back and I look at my career and I regretted so much towards the end of my ski racing career, like, why couldn't I get it together? Why couldn't I see what I can see now being away from the sport? I don't think I could ever have changed my mental mentality. I just wasn't that fierce of a competitor to isolate other people away, or to not be friendly, or to not be a teammate. Once I realized that I could not hold my own in that environment, it was time for me to leave.
So there's a segue here to, and it's a really story, but so there's this segue to big mountain skiing. And talk us through that piece of this then. How does this get going for you?
Well, so kind of from afar, I was watching Shane, and he was having so much fun being a goofball and bump skiing. And I'm like, bump skiing? Shane, what the hell are you doing? Like, that is like against all alpine racers' futures, bump skiing. But he was making a scene on the bump scene, and then mountain and filming. And so I'd show up at SQUA. I was still on the ski team, and I remember it was Christmas break, and Shane was home, and I ran into him, and I was like, hey, Shane, can I go follow you around today? And Scott, who he didn't really talk to me much, but I followed him and Shane around, and I would just hang out with Scott, and Scott was filming Shane doing all these hits, and I don't know, he was just having so much fun. And so that definitely got in my head. I left the ski team. I moved back home to go to school at Sierra Nevada College, and I was there to race on their race team. And after a year, realizing that I'm not trying to be an Olympian, I'm trying to be the best ski racer anymore, I just could barely get down a ski course. So I gave up my scholarship, and I told my dad. I faxed him a letter. This is back in the faxing days. He worked in San Francisco, so I faxed my dad a letter. I'm giving up my scholarship, I'm quitting school, and this is in December, and I'm hitting the road to ski one last winter, because I'm never gonna ski again, but I wanna have fun before I hang up my skis. I'm gonna find a place to get into mountain biking and go to school. And I put that same note, not as detailed, under my coach's door, and I never saw him again. And I moved all my stuff out, packed up my car, and I went on a road trip, and ended up here in Crested Butte. And the extreme comp back in '96 was a few weeks away, but I started free skiing, and people were talking me into it. And they're like, oh, you should do this extreme comp. I'm like, no, I'm never gonna ski again. I'm just here for fun. And then it started to kind of get in my head, and people started showing me the venue. And so I entered the contest, and I had never seen one before. I knew nothing about it, but everybody showed me, for all you guys who know the venue or the ski resort, headwall was day one, and I was told that all the girls, when you're looking up at the venue, cross angle goalie, cross that whole area, and then skiers right of angle goalie. I'm like, okay. So I warmed up there a little bit, and then contest day comes. And I haven't watched a contest in a long time, but back a long time ago, hundreds of people at the base of headwall, barbecue, chairs, like people just lounged out. And we get 2 runs. So I went where all the girls went, and all the girls went there. Everybody skied beautiful. You know, it was nice. I think I was in second or third. And Shane was there. And I start watching, he's running later, so he's hanging out at the bottom. And so we're watching the guys come down. And I don't want to disrespect, because I know everyone skis different, and now there's new school way of skiing. I came from a very, trained, rigid background. And these guys would start skiing down, heading right to the skier's left of angle goalie, airing in, shooting out, crazy stuff. And I'm with Shane. I'm like, oh my God, Shane, I'm a better skier than that guy. Can't I do that? He's like, yes. And then another guy would come down. I'm like, that guy sucks. Can't I do that? He said, yes. So we did that for like about 5 runs. And then he helped He's like, all right, this is what you're gonna do. And so all the girls went up for their second run. All the girls went back, skiers right of angle goalie. And I start skiing right down to the left rock edge. Everybody, when they started seeing where I was going, just started freaking out. And I remember skiing down going, oh my God, this is so cool. And then I got to this air into angle goalie, and I stopped. And this is back in the day when you could pause. And I paused, and I just took it all in. And I was just like, this is amazing. And I'll just add that I'm on 200 GS race skis with Derby Flex. So I'm in like old school stuff. And and then I landed like just in enough space where my skis can straight shot out. And then I did like 3 or 4 turns down to the finish. And everyone surrounded me. And like, we've never seen a girl do that. That was amazing. Thinking like, okay, I can do this, you know? And I still was on the path to never ski again, but Shane just kept saying, Wendy, you need to go to the SIA show. You need to promote yourself. You need to keep. I'm like, nope, Shane, I'm never skiing again. And then after the contest, I was here for a few more days, and I ended up packing up my car, driving back out to Tahoe. I did the Squaw event, won it, did the Kirkwood event, won it, went to where the SIA show was. Dina Starr gave me some money to help me get to Alaska, flew up to Alaska, won the Worlds, and I never quit skiing.
Idea of, you just had me thinking that like every time in life where you're like, oh, I'm not sure I can do this. If like Shane McConkey just walked out, was like, no, you got this, you know, like how we'd be all better by like 150%.
Totally.
So
yeah.
you got that experience. So.
Right. And then again, it's the pat on the shoulder. I mean, from that moment on, from that run of everyone surrounding me, that was growing up, right? I was getting good at ski racing. People would say something. I got good at water skiing, and that was my other sport. I ran cross country and I won. So here I am, like suddenly that moment, I was like, I'm home again. This is where I need to be. Like I'm surrounded by a community of men and women, and even the women, I must add, because I left a community of women who I didn't. So now I'm in this free skiing world of everyone's just like, we want you to get better because this makes the sport better. And so all the guys, all the girls, we'd go to contests. That was, realize that again, this is where I'm meant to be. And it was awesome feeling, like definitely, because when I left ski racing, it's like, man, I was like 23, 24. I thought I was now you look back, that's really young. But I just remember thinking to myself, I just trained my whole life up to this point, and now I'm done skiing. Like, what's my future? And nothing against ski school or like teaching skiing at that point, because I do teach skiing now, but that was not my next path. I wasn't meant to be a teacher yet. I didn't want to teach. I wasn't done skiing, even though I thought I was done. So that whole world of big mountain skiing, up pretty much in that year of 96, 97. And then Mike Jaquet got us all together, Kent Kreitler, Shane McConkey, myself, Allison Ganna, a bunch of influencers, even though I was new to the whole free skiing thing, got us together to talk about a new magazine for kids, and that was Freeze Magazine. And I really think that magazine, I don't know if you guys remember Freeze Magazine, but that I think really opened the door up kids now seeing a future in skiing that wasn't racing or freestyle, you know. It was really cool.
A bit about the filming. You filmed with Warren Miller, you filmed with Matchstick, and you were one of very few women filming at, it seems, and you've got some interesting kind of stories and perspectives on that, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I grew up working hard and definitely at Burke, training hard, just no complaints. I mean, it was all sweat and hard work, and you achieve things. So now I'm in this atmosphere, and I was asked to go travel with Matchstick with all these guys, and And, you know, I learned to just zip it. If I wanted to be with these guys, I just zipped it. I didn't whine. I didn't complain. I just tried to work hard so that they would invite me. And I know if I'm going to be a thorn in their side, they're not going to want me to be a part of their crew. And I very much wanted to be that. So I just bucked up and I didn't complain. I'd be terrified on a run, but I would just mentally have to pull myself together because I wanted to be asked back.
You talked a minute ago about feeling supported. And did you feel that same amount of support when it came to the filming stuff? Or did that, I don't know, kind of a little bit more of a culture of like, why are you here right now? Or what was that dynamic like?
No, 100%, yeah. I traveled with Matchstick for maybe like 7 years, and it was definitely a highlight. I loved being one of the boys. And I was treated like one. I mean, I in a shitty place just like all of them, and I just sucked it up. And we would be in the middle of nowhere in cabins with hardly any running water, and that is, you know, it was a family. So you were all in it together. And they supported me, helped me pick out lines. The hardest part was the pressure you put on yourself. I mean, with filming, you get one chance to do that line right. So the stress is almost making sure you have the line, mess it up, because you can't go up and do it again. So in a way, the intensity of big mountain skiing and filming was almost harder than ski racing. Ski racing, you go blue, red, you look ahead, you can see your path. It's just about being dynamic, quick, strong. Big mountain skiing, man, your life was on the line, and you had to make sure. And actually, in some of those runs in the video, I'm actually worked out in my benefit. I hit a bigger air than I would have planned. I was a spontaneous skier, and definitely from my background as a ski racer, I was able to mess up and still pull it off because I'm good in my sport. But yeah, no, all those years, I always felt like they wanted me there, that I was not a hindrance to them, that I helped support, even though as a group of guys elevate their level, or I wasn't holding them back by any means.
I also have heard that you made Seth Morrison's short list at one point in time of people who he was willing to go film with, which the biggest accomplishment of everything we've just talked about so far in your career?
It was, yeah. I was pulled into MSP's office one time, and they said, so Seth, you know, he doesn't put up with whiners or people who can't make decisive decisions. He's out there to do his job, work hard, find gnarly lines that are death-defying, and he doesn't want it's going to bring down his mojo, I guess, you know. So I came in and they're like, Wendy, Seth just said that he has only a few people that he will allow to film with him. And I'm the only girl and one of the few people that made the list. So that was definitely a big accomplishment, that I was worthy enough and easy enough to travel with.
It's one of the kind of bigger questions that I had is that you were really pioneering a lot of this stuff. I think we're in a spot today, and I think we're in this spot today, that there is a move to being more inclusive, right? To try to reduce some of the roadblocks or obstacles or friction. We more women involved in, we meaning I think the broader industry. We're generalizing here a bit. And when I think of your story, I think of maybe didn't have so much this kind of, I don't know, infrastructure of support. There weren't a bunch of women's groups. It's a different day, and I think there's still a lot of work to be done in these regards, but I'm curious what you sort of think about that today versus what you were doing. On the one hand, you were saying, even if it was among maybe a group of folks, including like Seth, Morrison, Shane McConkey, you were feeling supported at certain moments, but there's also an element where sometimes you were just walking through the door and you were like, yes, I'm gonna go do this. I really, truly don't know what is about to go happen, but I haven't heard you express a lot of hesitation about any of these different steps or transitions in your life.
No, I fully think with my heart. I don't think with my head. I don't let that interfere in my path. So if something comes my way and it sounds exciting, I'll do this. Okay, here. I don't think things through. I'm up in Alaska. Hadn't been up there for years. A girl who I used to compete against with, she's a badass. She became a mountaineer, a guide up in Alaska. I have tons of respect for her. And I'm in the Santa Lodge, which is an infamous, famous place up in Alaska. And I walk in, she's there, and she's telling me how she's planning a trip with a girlfriend to Denali. And go to Denali. And I look at her, I go, oh my God, I've always wanted to go there and like climb there. And honestly, I've never thought about it in my entire life. I called my boyfriend at the time, like, who's now my husband. I go to Denali with Kristen Kramer. He's like, Wendy, you hate snow camping. I mean, I'm not even a good camper when it's not snow. And he's like, and you hate the cold. And that's one of the coldest places. I'm like, isn't Everest colder? He's like, no. And here, it just sounded exciting. I'm like, I don't like to miss out on things. And when it comes down to something, and it could be off the wall, something I've never even heard of, I'll just act like I have, and because I don't want to miss out. I feel like it's worth trying something always once. And if it doesn't work out, you don't have to do it again. And so yeah, I was just someone, when an opportunity came my way, like filming with Matchstick, if they invited me, I will figure it out later. Still to this day, things come my way and I say yes, and I know I don't have to worry about it until the time comes. And when I'm in time, it's that day of whatever I said yes to, I'll get a panic, I get scared, but I'm like, I can get through this. Like, it's not the end of the world. I can get through this. So I usually just wait until to kind of figure it out and see what happens. So I'm very much spontaneous.
So what I think a couple refrains that we've heard tonight, work hard, say yes. Yeah?
Definitely,
Yeah. There's a third component that, if it hasn't been said as explicitly as those first two, we also haven't heard you, again, be failing on any of these fronts, or at least I haven't heard you say that yet.
No, I'm okay with failing. I don't know, failing to trying something that seems really cool or exciting, and I failed, like whatever, at least I attempted it. I'm not afraid of making a fool of myself or doing something that people might like. I just don't, that's not a hindrance. That doesn't stop me. Like, to have someone maybe laugh at a mistake. I mean, oh my God, I could tell you can I tell a few funny stories? So, Crested Butte, I don't know, you got Paradise Lift. They used to have a midway station. So once you get up to that crest and you can get into cell service, there used to be a midway station. And it was a that they built. So it's not like you were going to the snow level. You were on a ramp that you would have to ski down. And we were here for the US Nationals in 1991 when I was ski racing. And still today maybe, it was really cool to ski with your suspenders down. And my girlfriend and I were skiing, and we were on the Paradise Lift, and right as we get to the ramp, she's like, let's get off here. I'm like, okay. She got off, I did not. Suspenders were hooked on the corner of the chair, and I'm about 15 feet up in the air now, flying like a really ratty Superman. And And they stopped the chairlift, and I'm just swinging all limbs, and my suspenders closed really good. We're just hanging on. And then I just stopped, and the guys behind me are like, look, that girl's on the U.S. ski team, because I'm all decked out U.S. ski team outfit. And I'm just like, oh my God. So then I kick off down my poles, and I crawl up, and I unhook my suspenders, and I had to slither down and jump down. But that's probably the 5th time I fell off a chairlift. And so, I mean, I just think that's still one of the funniest, awesome moments of my life. I'm like, that was awesome, you know? Because you can't laugh at yourself or appreciate the dumb things you do. You're gonna struggle. Like, you just have to let that stuff go and find the. And so, yeah, I've failed a lot. And a lot of the failures are in Alaska where it's not funny, where you just get pummeled. I mean, I've been in avalanches. I've failed going off of, big, but I don't know, it's never bothered me.
Do you think that's a natural disposition, or do you think that that's something that you've, I don't know, like gotten better at over time or learned? Like, you fail, it's not that big a deal. Or the rewards outweigh the risks, or?
No, I think I was kind of klutzy when I was younger. So I think I grew up kind of like being the dorky goofball person. I was very hyper. I was always kind of spastic. So people did laugh at me a lot because stuff. But so I don't know. I guess I just embrace that that's who I am. Because it's weird, because if we go back to the school part, I mean, I didn't embarrass, I barely would talk, in a class. That area, I didn't like to embarrass myself because it meant you weren't smart, or, you lacked an IQ or whatever it was. But in the sporting world, if you didn't try hard and weren't failing, you weren't going to get better. And so I definitely had no problem because that was my arena to shine, and I'm going to fail, but it never bothered me.
We want to give you a chance to ask some questions. So be thinking of those questions. And as always, if you don't have questions, man, Marcel Proust, those are hard questions. So you better hope that they're, yeah. So, before we do this, or as you guys start thinking through what you might want to ask Wendy, I guess we'll all wrap with advice that you might have for a group of, let's say, undergraduates, are either involved in their own athletic careers at this point, or are kind of just thinking about and trying to navigate the future and who knows what's next. What might you have to say to such a hypothetical group, given your own experience in life so far?
Well, like I already said earlier, I wasn't a goal writer. You learn that you're supposed to write where you want to be in 5 years, what job position do you want, how much money you're going to make. I can tell you right now, every contest that I ever did, in whether it's ski racing or big mountains, I remember we'd go to a big mountain competition, I was like, what's the prize money if you win? And I'm like, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the pure joy of competing and challenging myself, and I'm with these group of people. So I didn't base anything off of other than fun factor. And I know that's not a great way to tell someone who wants to be a lawyer or doctor. I mean, I think that's a different mindset altogether. The instant my heart started to just waffle or start to ache and pain of just like, I don't know where I am right now, I don't know who I am right now, I would tune into that and be like, what's wrong? Why am I not happy anymore? What's triggering this? And I think I learned this from my ski team years when it became very isolating. Like, you have to be your own advocate. I didn't have anyone to talk to. And, that's a whole other conversation of trying to get out of depression or, the things that you can get into when you're down. So I was like, well, I'm not happy. I'm down. I'm done with this chapter. So like on the ski team, I was there. I was super depressed. I was sad that this chapter is coming to end. I've worked my whole life as a ski racer, but it's not happening for me anymore. And I quit. And I just, and then when I got into the big mountain contest and I just felt full of life, I was like, well, I'm still young. Why can't I need to do this for a while. I need to feel that happiness again. And then it just never stopped. But I'm still like that. I have this gauge of, that sounds really exciting to go that way, and I'll go there. I don't know what's on the other side, and I don't care. Mm-hmm. If you don't try, you'll never know what's on the other side. So I'm just one of those people who, is the price right? That part doesn't matter to me, but I want to know what's on the other side, regardless. So I don't know. You just have to take chances. You have to, even if you feel scared to make a decision, but it seems exciting to you, then you gotta go there. Don't let the fear stop you from being afraid of what's on the other side, because you never know. I don't know. So I'm a believer that you have to get really in tune with yourself, and you can be your own advocate of understanding your personality and your emotions to tell you what's a good trigger or a wrong trigger.
Questions?
Maddie Swanson, who actually works with Strafe, or worked with Strafe in the past, wants to say, first, your pink stripey is looking good.
Thank you.
The question is, as a sponsored athlete, you've had the opportunity to work with top brands in the industry. Can you tell us more about the relationships with those sponsors? Specifically, what are some of the elements that help create a good partnership?
With sponsors?
Yes.
One, just respecting that they're sponsoring you. I've always appreciated anyone who is willing to and again, that's the support of identifying that they believe in me. And I would do anything. I mean, I used to write postcards to all my sponsors, like, hey, I'm in Europe, and so much for sponsoring me and having me part of your brand. And, and they'd be like, hey, Wendy, we want you to fly up to Whistler, and can you do this photo shoot? I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm on the next flight. I was always available to them. I definitely appreciated that they saw value in me, and I always wanted to upkeep that value, and that's how this whole industry works. But I have to say, it works with Instagram and Facebook, and I've had a hard time with that whole side of the industry, because it used to just be when Matchstick or TGR or Warren Miller put out their film, marketing that you just invested everything in for the year, and that told the story, not like the daily post or the weekly post with the monologue about their life. I don't know. I it's too much nowadays. I try to support the companies who support me and show the respect of what product they have. So I don't know. Okay. Yeah.
By the way, on that front, I hear and talk with a number of different companies where, on the one hand, what you've just said sounds to me really simple and straightforward, and it is definitely not always the case, right? And so I would take to heart anyone who just heard Wendy say, like, trying to be helpful and hearing where you can be supportive of those companies. That seems to, I would say, be an element that is sponsored. Some of them could stand to be reminded of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm still close to a lot of companies who I'm not even with anymore, I think you don't want to burn a bridge. I also learned that in the ski industry is a small industry. Someone who you pissed off with one company might turn around and be with another company that you're now with, and you have to work with that person. So it's a small world, and you've treat everyone with kindness and try to or go directly to the person involved, but show your enthusiasm for the people who are trying to help you out, you know?
What zone or feature on CB has always freaked you out?
Oh, let me think. What zone? Well, I have to say there's definitely elements on the edge that I wish I would go for more. You know, it's all about how it's filled in and everything. Where else? I don't know. That's a hard question. I mean, I attempted most of the obstacles up there. I'm trying to think of, well, I know unfortunately Big Hourglass isn't opened very much anymore, but I did get to ski in that venue and do contests. And that was one of the most challenging and scary, as much as it sounds like it's awesome to have that venue open for a contest, it's most of the time, you know, because they don't bomb it, it's not like people are skiing on it. And I just remember it was definitely one of the most terrifying moments because you don't know the area all that well. I guess one thing, body bag. So I can do the lower air body bag. And 2004, I won the contest. I was actually pregnant with my son. 2005, and I aired out. But then 2005, Jen Ashton from Canada came down and she competed. And I did my same body bag, and she did the upper air. I didn't even know it really existed. I hadn't seen anyone do it. And I was like, wow. And so I think my years, I think I've gone beyond being able to want to attempt that, unless it's huge. But that was awesome. I know all you boys can do it out there, but to me, that was a pretty cool line.
So the Freeride World Tour just announced equal prize money for men and women in all categories. And even though you said prize money wasn't much of an incentive for you, I'd like to hear any of your thoughts on what impact that might have on the sport.
I think it's awesome. I mean, I always wish that was happening for me, but honestly, I also couldn't dwell on the fact that I wasn't getting equal pay. I don't know. I'm not a very confrontational person, so I'm not a great female advocate for in terms of that because I don't like to ruffle my, beyond my aura, I guess. But I think that would have been awesome, and I'm glad to hear that. It still wouldn't change what I would ever even plan to do in a contest or not. I mean, I always try to plan after that very first run in the extremes when Shane helped me pick out that line. My lines were always about trying to ski something super technical, have an air. I wanted to challenge myself as a female skier, and it would frustrate me. Sometimes that would win would be the big super G, flash run that someone would do. Meanwhile, I was billy goating into some manky stuff, and I would get hung up, and I wouldn't win. That because I felt more reward out of challenging myself than to go pick the easy line. So I'd probably still try to pick the hard line and maybe end up not winning because I might get hung up on something. I was more empowered. It was more empowering to me to try to push something that I knew was a challenge and maybe wasn't capable of pulling off, rather than trying to find a line that was super easy. Didn't take much mental thought or courage. And I remember filming a lot. We'd be on these peaks. I'd always be terrified. I'd ask myself, why do I even go on these film trips? I'm always I just want an easy day. One day, I wanted an easy day in Alaska. That was my dream. Someday not to be scared. Well, a bunch of us, as a non-filming day, we got a ship together of friends, but the conditions were dangerous. So we had to ski kind of low angle, mellow stuff. And I was kind of relieved, like, oh God, great. I get to have a mellow day. I was bored out of my mind. I was frustrated all day long. And so here I wanted that easy day. I like easy. Like I thrive on challenges, which is why I consider Crested Butte to be one of the best mountains anywhere. I mean, we're small, but I don't want a big open bowl. I don't want to go to Vail and ski. I don't like no obstacles in front of me. I like obstacles. I like rocks. I like trees. I like to think about every turn. I like steep pitches. And so that one experience, heli skiing in a mellow terrain, I was just like, meant for mellow. I need challenge. And so that's why I think we all live in one of the places that has one of the best resorts or some of the best terrain.
What is your favorite zone to ski in the world?
In the world? Oh my God. Well, that's hard. One, okay, as you can already tell, I'm a people person. Like I have to have good people around. I mean, this is another thing. You could be in the biggest resort in the world, but if you don't know where to go, it sucks unless you're with the right people to show you the nooks and crannies, right? Like Crested Butte's small, but it has amazing. Could be in teen France and not know where to go, and I could have a boring day. But one of the best, I think, trips I ever had with amazing camaraderie of awesome, awesome snow, like everything just lined up perfectly, was Las Leñas, Argentina. It was insane. And the terrain there is mind-blowing. It's one of those hidden treasures, but it's like here, but even harder. It's windy, so there's this one lift, the Marte lift, that you are hoping is going to be open because it gets you to all this awesome stuff. If it's windy, it won't open. You know, they're not on it in terms of like ski patrol bombing things. There's a little safety factor also, but it's by far one of the most amazing venues that people don't know about.
What is one of the funniest Shane McConkey stories you have? I know it's a little touchy subject, but anybody that's been impacted by Shane, I feel like has some kind of hilarious story. Would you be willing to share that?
Yeah. I tell this one often because it's super funny. Well, in Portillo, so Chris Davenport started a camp called Skiing with the Superstars. And so now we're with Shane just in a teaching venue, and we chili, and we have a sushi night in this one bar area. And we just finished up. We have some sushi that's still sitting around, and a group of people come in who are just lit up on red wine. Just fully red there, but we know them, and they sit kind of across from us, and Shane's like, watch this. And he packs up a huge wasabi ball, puts it underneath one of the fish, and pass it around. And so we're like, hey, do you guys want some sushi? And we pass the tray, and it makes it around to them, and we all know which fish has the extra wasabi. And so people are grabbing it, and we're just watching it, and they have no idea what's going on. He grabs it, and he starts eating it, and he doesn't say anything to his friends, but you instantly just see him stop. He's no longer laughing, no longer engaging with people. He starts sweating, turning really red, like in his head, and we're all just sitting there like fully cracking up. And he swallows it down, but just the whole setup, and I don't know if I did it very well, but it was just hilarious, and definitely good pranks. And then, he also brought his bass chute with him. And so he rigged me up. And in Portillo, we could do this because in the US, everyone's too strict. But he put up the gear, and he's like, Wendy, you're going to ski down and fly. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. But he put a radio on me. And so I start skiing down, the chute comes up, and now I'm flying. I've never been in a parachute ever in my life. Has a magical way of talking you into just stupid stuff. So he's radioing, he's like, pull right, pull left. And I'm just floating over, and there's people skiing down, and my feet are about 20 feet above them, and just looking and coasting down. I get to the bottom of the lift and just land perfectly. But it was just so cool because Shane was just skiing right below me, radio up the whole way, like pull left, pull right, do this, do that. And he's someone who you would want to trust in his hands, but he always pulled through like that, yeah. And I think you had a question?
I was wondering, since you said you're a people person and you say yes to everything, I'm the same way where I just like say yes to people, and then I find that I book myself too much and then I take the fun out of it. So my question is like, how do you say yes to those exciting things, but you also say no to the things in order to like take care of yourself too and keep that fun in it?
That's a good one.
That's a good one because I'm there right now. I've been running around nonstop. And I think you start, I'm a lot older than you, you start to wean out, you start to tell which ones just maybe won't be quite as satisfying so I'm 48 and I'm just learning to kind of say no to things. It's taken me a long time because I am just like, oh my God, someone wants me to do something with them, or someone's gonna invite me on this trip and do this and that. And I have started to kind of discover what, to just read it. My gauge is, I have another funny story I could tell with Mike Douglas, but basically if I think I'm gonna regret it and I can't go to sleep at night because it bothers me that I said no, that's something that then I have to jump on. If it doesn't keep me up all night and I don't really think about it much, then it was a good decision to pass. And that is also, like maybe you tell someone to give you a day or two to decide, and if it's something you can't stop thinking about, then you have to do it, you know? So if you guys want to Google Supermom, you go to Wendy Fisher Supermom. Mike Douglas did a Solomon Frisky TV episode on me. And he takes me to this air that, and I actually had one of my worst crashes. It's in the episode. One of my worst crashes of my career. And that was the first run I took. And now I kept filming because it was a story on me coming back after kids and stuff. He takes me this huge air and I'm standing on top of it and I am just, in my head, I'm just swearing at Mike Douglas. I'm like, oh my freaking God, I cannot believe he brought me here. But again, it was this thing that like, Mike thinks I can do this. Yeah. And it was one of my bigger airs that I probably ever did. It's one that I didn't like because if you do I like airs that once you air, all the terrain that's in your way is gone. But this one just jutted out. And even towards the end, it seemed like it grew bigger. And so I had to make sure I cleared it all. I'm like, oh my God, I have to clear all that. And what if my feet hit the rocks towards the end? And all the stuff's going in my head. He starts calling me, he sees me hesitating. He just starts calling me every horrible name that you can imagine, which I know offends some women, but to me, I knew what he was doing. And I said that, I was like, Mike, I know what you're trying to do. He's calling me the worst lame names ever. And I'm like, I know what you're trying to do, and it's not gonna work. And then I just stood there, and he was quiet for a while, and then he said, just think how happy you'll be. And I was like, oh my God. And that was the trigger. I'm like, if I walk away from this, I'm gonna have nightmares for weeks, months, years. It probably was out of the blue come into my head that I walked away from that air, and I would regret it. So I was like, well, I already ate shit once today, and it's nothing but powder down there. What horrible thing. This is also what I gauged when I did my contest. I would look at an air and be like, will I die? I don't think I'll die, but I might break a leg and I might break an arm. I've never broken anything. So I still, the only things I've ever broken are my thumbs, and those were my ski racing days. So I looked at terrain, and I say, will I break an arm? Could I break a leg? Yeah, sure. Who hasn't broken something? You know, that happens to a lot of people. So when Mike pulled that, he's like, just think how happy you'll be. That is me. Like, if I walk away from this, I'm gonna regret it, and it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt my heart. I'm gonna have like tons of anxiety and angst that I walked away, and I did it, and I stuck it. And I'm like, oh my God, thank God I did that. So that's, you know, I knew if I walked away from that air, it would be challenging more in the long run. And if I fell, whatever. So I don't know. So you just gotta sleep on it. And I think as you get more into it with all these opportunities, you're going to figure out which ones are just a waste of time and not that exciting to you. Yeah. But yeah, you can't spread yourself too thin where it's just not fun anymore.
Will be our last one unless someone's desperate to sneak. All right, last question.
So I'm wondering, where is skiing, where are you at with skiing now? Is it still a career for you? How has it evolved, and what is the phase of skiing for you right now?
So yeah, if someone asked me to be a part of a movie, I would, because I'm a sucker like that. If Warren Miller movie last year, but the dates didn't work out. But I'm like, yeah, I'll totally go. Like I was just in Aspen and went out with a photographer for Strafe to try to get some photos that I could post here and there and just to have. But I mostly teach. I teach now for Vail or Crested Butte, but I was a non-employee who could teach for the last 12 years. I travel around and ski with clients. I'm going to go to Telluride and I ski with the group and I'm going to give a talk. Then I'm flying to Europe and I'm skiing with Franz Weber and Franz Klammer and skiing with a corporate group. So I still try to make a career, but I'm also trying to figure out how to phase out of just doing it for fun. But I love teaching people too. Like I love now that I got most of the skiing out of the way for me and I am ready to help others. I do love skiing with intermediate skiers and even expert, but you get more reward when you're teaching someone who has lack of confidence, doesn't believe in themselves, and you start getting them down harder runs or different terrain. I'm still doing that, and I'm with my kids a lot, skiing with them. So I wouldn't say I'm not chasing the movie lifestyle anymore. I'm not chasing the photo shoots to be a part of different magazines and stuff, because one, it's just expensive. You're basically paying your way now. Or I would be. And I have a family. But does that hold me back from skiing the way I want to ski? No. Like, you guys find and I get egged on to go hit something, I'm totally willing to do that. Actually, I just skied with my son and a bunch of kids. I had a day off from skiing in Aspen races, and they're hitting airs, and that's my skiing style. And that is also, just to get back to kids, is now that I'm older and I'm with other moms or husbands who talk about their wives, and a lot of them say, oh, my wife used to do that, but then she had kids and now she holds back. And my whole thing is like, screw that. I want my kids to know me. And I don't want them to hear about what I used to do or how I used to be. I feel like I'm dead. So I ski with my kids and I still want to charge and let them see the type of skier and personality I am, not to be the one that sits on the sidelines because I'm too old or I have kids safe. That's the whole thing about the supermom thing too. Right before I eat it really bad, Mike Douglas asked me, he's like, what about the kids? And that upset a lot of people. They, wrote, you asked that question. I knew it was coming. I'm like, that's part of the deal. People rip on Shane for doing what he did and he had a kid. That's our lifestyle, and I'm not saying I'm going to risk my life, but you still got to live, and I want my kids to see me living to the fullest, not being afraid of life.
One of the things I think is so interesting about you and your story and your experiences, I really kind of get the sense that every single one of us in this room could pick up on a different of your story and something you've said, and we might all end up with different takeaways. And I think that's really interesting. I think for me, the strength of your kind of internal compass is kind of one of the most interesting takeaways for me, that there's nothing about your story where it felt like someone said you couldn't do this, and so that was, there was just this pushing forward, but it was mostly governed by like, is that interesting? Will it make me happy? If I don't do that, will I live with regret? And those are interesting ways to make very basic day-to-day decisions, and it has nothing to do with salary, and it has nothing to do with the amount of prize money and the rest. And I think that there are really important, interesting things for us to think about in our own lives, and whether we might want to have our own internal compass kind of calibrated the way you have in your life. And so for that, I'm really thankful for you would come here and share that story and that experience. And I have no doubt that the next week and next month and next year are going to kind of operate for you exactly in that same way as you've been operating. For one, very happy about that. So,
well, thank you.
Thanks so much for coming, Wendy, and thanks for sharing again your remarkable story.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for putting up listening to me.